Bizarre Brain Comics. Hello, Gary here for Bizarre Brain Comics, where I like to talk about some old comics, talk about the creators, the art, the stories. Maybe give you a little more knowledge. Only if you're interested in this stuff, like I am. Okay, this time we want to take a look at this book right here. This is from Gold Key Comics, Magnus Robot Fighter, 4000 AD, from 1967. And this is titled Fear Unlimited. By Russ Manning. I don't know if he wrote and drew it. I couldn't find that information. So let's take a little look in the big book of knowledge. And Russ Manning, he's had a big impact in some comics, and it's well known. A lot of fans. As I said, this is Magnus Robot Fighter number 19 from Gold Key Comics, 1967. Magnus Robot Fighter, 4000 AD, is a science fiction superhero created by Russ Manning in 1963, originally published by Gold Key Comics. In the 90s, the character was picked up by Valiant Comics and later by Acclaim Comics. I don't think I've ever seen any of the Acclaim comics, but I wasn't thrilled with anything that the Valiant Comics did with the old Gold Key characters, especially Turok. But Magnus wasn't too terrible. Initially, it started out pretty decent, and then it kind of went off on something else. Now, here we go. Russ Manning from 1929 to 1981. So he wasn't that old. He's an American comic book artist, creator of Magnus Robot Fighter, but he's best known for drawing the Tarzan comic strip and later the Star Wars syndicated strip. And Russ Manning, he studied at the Los Angeles County Art Institute. And while in the Army, he drew cartoons for the newspaper published on his military base. In 1953, he went to work for Western Publishing, drawing a variety of stories for Dell Comics, which is later Gold Key. And he drew his first continuing story title was Brothers of the Spear, which was a backup feature in the Tarzan books. He created Magnus and the backup feature, The Aliens. And from 65 to 69, he drew the Tarzan comic book. I think it was after the death of Jesse Marsh. And in my opinion, Manning is a vastly superior draftsman. As he adapted 10 Tarzan novels by Edgar Rice Burroughs, which were the text was adapted by Gaylord Dubois. And he also drew several issues of Korax of Tarzan. From 1967 to 72, he drew the Tarzan daily strip, and continued on the Sunday strip until 79. He used this, and from what I understand, he also, during that time, also did a few Tarzan graphic novels for European publication, which were only later published in the U.S. And he used assistants at this time, and notably William Stout, who's known for his marvelous dinosaur illustrations, and Dave Stevens, who is the creator of The Rocketeer. Russ Manning is one of my favorites. Did some great work. I, of course, especially love his Tarzan, but also, well, just about anything he did. Especially loved his Tarzan and Magnus. So, let us go take a look within the pages of Magnus Robot Fighter 4000 AD. Here we are, Magnus Robot Fighter 4000 AD. You can get a good view of the whole full cover. This is a beautiful cover painting. I think there's no credits for it. Unfortunately, they never credited. And but I think it could be George Wilson, who did so many of the cover paintings for Gold Key during the 60s and 70s. There's some wonderful, wonderful work. And if you're not familiar with the character, I want to tell you a little bit about him right here. Okay, Magnus, okay, created by Russ Manning, but he lives in the city of North Am in 4,000, roughly 2,000 years in the future. And North Am is a single city which covers the entire continent of North America. And have these huge, and it's a little bit like if, Star Wars, Coruscant, the city which was the seat of the Republic and the Empire. Kind of think of that as North Am. Now, undoubtedly, there are other gigantic cities throughout the world, but they focus on North Am. And at this time, robots are a staple for everything, from do a lot of the manual labor. They're used for guards and police forces and the army. They have soldier robs and pole robs and guard robs and taking care of your little baby and stuff like that. So I don't know what people do, but we see a lot of. But there are also, while most people live in these giant, because most of the city takes place high up in the clouds or in the altitudes, and where the main city is, but clear down at the base, there's still existing large swaths of not untouched, but ruins from previous eras, and a lot of people, poor people, still live down there. It's what one might think of today as people living in the sewers under our city, something like that. There are poor, mostly homeless people, and a lot of them involved in various criminal organizations and the like, gangs. A lot of them just poor people trying to survive, and the people up in the upper city, these destitute people down on the ground, they call them cloud clotties. They don't refer to them here in this, but you do see some of the ruins and such down at the bottom. And the people from the upper levels very seldom, if ever, go down to the lower levels where these other people live. And because robots are so pervasive, and many people think that the human civilization is too dependent on robots, and which, from the sounds of it, is probably true. And Magnus is there to fight rogue robots and villains who use robots for evil and the like. And to protect the the everyday people of Northam, from the top to the bottom. And he has a girlfriend who is named Legia, and she is the daughter of some senator or other who's a good friend of Magnus. Now, Magnus, like I said, he's basically a superhero, but he doesn't have any real superpowers. He was an orphan. We don't know from where he had come, but he was raised from infancy and in a secluded submarine base by a robot, robot A1, who is more intelligent than your average robot, and very definitely had high faculty of artificial intelligence. And he trained Magnus specifically to protect people from robots. And A1 trained him and endowed him through peak physical training, not what they called super strength, but what they called steel smashing strength. They never say he has super strength anywhere. They always say his steel smashing strength, which is what he needs. Plus, he's a master of martial arts, which he uses on the robots. Okay, let's take a look here within this book, within this comic. And here I kind of like this. Right at the beginning is a gallery of fan art of all kinds of robots, and there's Magnus with a robot and the like. It's by kids, and it gives their locations. Okay, Magnus Robot Fighter, Fear Unlimited, and it has a splash panel and shows Magnus on this Rob mount, or Mount Rob, how they put it, and being menaced by the images of these other robots. And our story begins in accuser court. And the judge, the main judge, is a robot, but there are human judges on the council also. So Magnus only name. See, Magnus only has the one name. He has no first or last name. He doesn't even know it. He just knows his name as Magnus, which is Latin for basically the Great One, meaning Carolus Magnus, Charles the Great. So, and Magnus was filtered into Scandinavian tradition as a proper name, going back nearly 1,000 years, like the great Viking scholar Magnus Magnusson. Okay, Magnus only name. By your own efforts, you proved that you are not guilty of having caused the disappearance of important science robs. You were falsely accused. And this is probably referring back to a previous issue. So they do have some continuity, because he has villains which do reappear, and so he's being on that charge being cleared, but it says since they have no record of you anywhere in the city, you're being held on is it no record, birth, training, or identification, and that you have refused to allow psychoprobe tests, and then crash, because they were going to do something with him. And here come these Mount Robs, and cloaked figures come rushing in, and there's Magnus. Pick him up, and these things take out the guard Robs and snatch Magnus, and quickly rush out the door. And that's Legia, that red-haired lady there, Magnus's girlfriend, and the senator who is his friend. And they take off, and then Magnus fights back. Now I want to so you can really see, and so far, regular standard 3-tier 6-panel page layout, with modifications. But the artwork, take a good look. Manning was a master at the human anatomy, and even he's so consistent in that and his backgrounds. Here, all his backgrounds are, as you'll see, is imaginative. And the way he just shows the city and everything. It's all from his imagination, but it's very consistent and excellent draftsmanship. He has a beautiful, beautiful, clean line here, which works so well for this science fiction setting, and it even works well in his Tarzan stuff. But it's so clean, it looks almost artificial. At least to my eye, it looks almost artificial. Okay, so here they're taking Magnus. He's fighting back, and they have to turn on this gizmo. Click. And Magnus is thinking, there's something familiar about these people's voices. And suddenly these, when the guard pole robs, are catching up to him, they turn on this gizmo, and suddenly have the image of these giant, horrendous robots. And it sends waves of fear, doubt, and terror, even to robots, even to the robots. And then these images, holographic images of these giant robots are smashing the robots, when in fact they're just images, but the robots believe what they are seeing, and they think they're being crushed. So they have a physical effect, and then they take off in fear, because those waves of fear and dread even affect the robots. So it must be something that... So even the pole robs must have some level of artificial intelligence and self-awareness. Then they take off with Magnus. And then the people take off their hoods and they're like, "Hi, Magnus." The Outsiders. Now, the Outsiders are I don't want to say gang, but just a small group of friends of varying social status, and they don't fit in with the mainstream of the North Am society, and they are friends and sometimes helpers of Magnus. Here, look at this standard Russ Manning face. That could be right from Tarzan as well, because his Tarzan looks in the face looks exactly the same, and his figure too looks exactly the same as Magnus, except for this little costume that he wears. And Magnus is not happy. He says, using these kind of robots are illegal, and what you did is he said, but we've joined the Rob Routers because they're fighting against robots. And and their leader is Der Kaiser. Der Kaiser. It's an ancient German word for dictator. I'd better see what they're up to. And so Magnus willingly goes along with them. And they go clear down to the bottom, under the main city, where there are still people living and ruins of things. And they come to a sports stadium. This is where it works out of. And they go into the place where they're having training of these Rob Routers, the group that they belong to, training on these robot bodies, which are illegal. Training on using because they need to fight robots. They need robots. Then there's gong, and the Kaiser is going to speak. And here he is. Unfortunately, there's a little printing error, and his face is smeared with red ink. But and they're shouting, Der Kaiser, Der Kaiser. And you can see here that Russ Manning also did the lettering and the balloons. So he probably did the whole shebang. At least I can, because I recognize his stuff. Real nice figure here, and imaginative. Just like I said here, when you saw the city, only got to one image right there. We'll see more of it later. Very imaginative, like something out of a big time sci-fi movie. And Magnus recognizes him, because Magnus is disguised here because he doesn't want to be seen by these other people. And says, "That's Dr. Laszlo Noel. He's returning. He's a recurring villain for Magnus. And they're going to strike. They're going to wreak havoc and terror in North Am and destroy robots to free people from the overlordship of robots." And Magnus has got to do something, so he strips off his disguise, rushes up, and says, "Don't listen to him. Don't you recognize him? This is Noel. He's a villain, and the Kaiser's mad scheme would send your world and your parents and friends crashing into chaos beyond imagining." Because these guys are kind of like hippie activists from the 60s. Then the guy who's anti-robot, the Kaiser, sends his guard robs to take care of Magnus, and Magnus makes short work of them. Then it's almost like a riot there in the stadium, and Magnus's friends are fighting along with him, while the others the Kaiser sends them off. The others off. They manage to catch Magnus, so he sends his people off to start the attack, while Magnus's friends, the Outsiders, they go too, but they're there to keep track of what's going on and try to help out. And one of them, Murph, I think he stays behind to see if he can help Magnus. And Magnus can't get leverage because of the way they're holding him. Remember, he doesn't have real super strength, but it's steel smashing strength, which in effect is super strength. Look at the face on him. Oh, it's a great face. Both of those faces. Magnificent, beautiful line work. I just love Russ Manning's work. Too bad he was cut short. And then they're getting images relayed from their people in the control center here, where you can see the robot holograms terrorizing people. The idea is to make people totally afraid of robots and eliminate them. And here they are. And the Outsiders strip off their hoods so that they don't get mistaken for the bad guys. And they attack the Rob Routers, and they're fighting amongst themselves. Meanwhile, Magnus here, I can't get leverage. I can't get loose. And the friend Murph here, he's snuck in, and he sees Magnus's plight. And he dives in, taking the robots by surprise, giving Magnus a chance to really lay them low, and even knocking out Noel. They've got to go. They've got to hurry and try to take help the others. So they get on the Rob mounts and head back. Head to the section where their people are fighting. And he tries to convince the Rob Routers again with a little bit of success. Gets this one young girl. Her name is Willow Talltree, and she says, "No, the Kaiser fooled us." Well, the others take off, but she stays with the Outsiders and strips off her robes. Meanwhile, they head back down to the control there, where Der Kaiser has been, and they have that as a shield. They have that powerful fear thing turned up high to even penetrate the shields that their machines have. And he says, "Coming right through our shields!" And they're almost struck with panic, but Magnus forces them on. "Don't run, don't stop, keep going," until they get past that area. All these horrible looking monster robots, and then they're safe, at least safe from the dread. And here they get back to the control, and Magnus says the door's open and something's not right. So he sends the Rob mount in alone, and it's zapped because there are guard rays. And they keep in sequence sending in the guard the mounts here. Nice pacing here on these panels to show what's going on, and has the dark shadows so that you can't see clearly, and it gives more ominous. And you can see that each of these mounts is destroyed in turn, but it shorts out the guard rays until Magnus has a clear shot at Neil. And then Neil's got something up his sleeve. starts up some engines. The place is shuddering. They've got to get out of there. Hurry up. And it's actually a spaceship. His control center was a spaceship inside this stadium, this ancient stadium. And goes right through. He's getting away. Well, Space Patrol will go after him. Then afterwards, they're all in front of the court again. And the robot judge is going to, he's ready to convict them all. But the human judges on the panel overrule the robot judge and say, "Oh, no, we're grateful. You did a good thing for the people of Northam, and all charges are dropped, and you're free to go," and all this other stuff. And then here they are. You can get another good view of the city. It's kind of like the Jetsons, a more serious version of the Jetsons in the background in the city. And there's the outsiders, and the girl Willow is adopted into their little informal group. And there's Magnus with Legia, and everything's fine. Don't know if they ever actually caught the Kaiser. And then here's the backup story. Aliens, also created by, and this was serialized. So instead of one short little adventure of about 4 pages, it was serialized to get one longer storyline. But you have to get every issue to know what the hell's going on. But some beautiful work, and the way his version of technology here, it followed through to whenever he needed some technology. But it shows his skill at doing jungle scenes, which served purpose in his Tarzan stuff. And his weapon, the weapons, the technology, and it has a distinctive Russ Manning look, including the spacesuits and the like, that followed through to his days doing the Star Wars comic strip. I have seen that machine in various forms many times over the years with Russ Manning stuff. It's just I think it's a well crafted. If Russ Manning himself wrote it, he did a good job of writing it. It was a well crafted, fast paced story, very dynamic artwork, some great draftsmanship, great visual storytelling. I think the story is well paced, well told, visually as well as the acts, and it's really a thrilling little story. And all of his Magnus Robot Fighter stories were like that. That was good, and I always enjoyed it. Magnus Robot Fighter was my introduction to Russ Manning's work when I was just a little kid, and it was only sometime later when I saw his Tarzan stuff and became a big fan of his Tarzan material as well. For a long time, I considered him my favorite artist, and he's still one of my favorite artists. He's just magnificent. And I think he did a good job of writing the story, if he did write the story. Whoever wrote it did a good job in writing the story. All of these Magnus stories are done so well. And the following publishers, for a little bit I've seen of them, could not even begin to compare to the original Magnus Robot Fighter. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. It's a nice introduction to Manning's work, to the character, and maybe it'll inspire you to seek some of this stuff out if you've never read it before, because it's a lot of fun, especially if you happen to like robots, which I always did as a kid, and if you like science fiction, which I still do, and so that's all I've got. And thank you very much. Please like, share, and subscribe. Share it with your other comic book friends or science fiction fans. You should enjoy it. And remember, comics are art.